Welcome back to another episode on Lafcadio Hearn's A Living God. In our previous video, we had seen how the central character Hamaguchi Gohei was addressed affectionately by the villagers as Oji-san, the grandfather. What happened on an autumn evening while all the other members of Hamaguchi's family were involved in festivities down in the village? Hamaguchi was feeling exceptionally weak that particular day. So he was left behind. He was resting in his farmhouse on the edge of the plateau. He was accompanied by his young grandson who was only 10 years old. What happens next? Let us find out. The day had been oppressive, and in spite of a rising breeze, there was still in the air that sort of heavy heat, which, according to the experience of the Japanese peasant, at certain seasons precedes an earthquake. So he was an experienced farmer. He knew that the day was quite oppressive. There was a kind of heat emitting out of the land, and farmers believed that such kind of weather generally preceded an earthquake. And presently an earthquake came. As he thought about the weather, he felt the slight tremors of the earthquake. It was not strong enough to frighten anybody, so it was not a very strong quake. But Hamaguchi, who had felt hundreds of shocks in his time, thought it was queer, a long, slow, spongy motion. So he felt there was something unusual about this particular tremor. It was long, slow, spongy. He had experienced numerous earthquakes previously in his life, but this one was different. It was strange. Thought it was queer, a long, slow, spongy motion. Probably it was, but the after tremor of some immense seismic action very far away. The house crackled and rocked gently several times, then all became still again. He felt as if it was an aftershock of a much larger seismic action. Seismic action means action or disturbance on the land mass on which we live. It is perhaps an after effect of that kind of an action, but the epicenter of the action was far away. That is what Hamaguchi felt. As the quaking ceased, Hamaguchi's keen old eyes were anxiously turned toward the village. Hamaguchi could not explain his anxiousness, but years of living in close proximity with nature told him that something was not right. He anxiously looked at the village. It often happens that the attention of a person gazing fixedly at a particular spot or object is suddenly diverted. So it often happens he was looking at the village and the people, but suddenly his gaze got diverted without any reason, without any logical purpose. By the sense of something, diverted by the sense of something not knowingly seen at all. So there was no conscious action, there was no logical reason, and he was also not conscious that his gaze shifted elsewhere. By mere vague feeling of the unfamiliar in that dim outer circle of unconscious perception which lies beyond the field of clear vision. So a strange vague feeling culminated in the mind of Hamaguchi. And without any conscious effort, without trying to consciously look somewhere, his eyes suddenly looked at something different. He was initially looking at the villagers who were down there, then unconsciously his attention or his gaze shifted elsewhere. It was beyond the field of clear vision. It means he did not intentionally stare at anything particular. Thus, it chanced that Hamaguchi became aware of something unusual in the offing. So, as he unconsciously gazed up, his eyes caught hold of something unusual in the offing. Offing is the line beyond the village, that is towards the sea. He could see something. He rose to his feet and looked at the sea. And the moment he noticed something unusual, he rose to his feet and came closer to the edge of the house so that he could get a proper view. He looked at the sea. It had darkened quite suddenly. Suddenly the sea was dark, and it was acting strangely. It seemed to be moving against the wind, and it was moving away from the shoreline against the wind. It was running away from the land. It was moving away from the land. Within a very little time, the whole village had noticed the phenomenon. Apparently, no one had felt the previous motion of the ground, but all were evidently astounded by the movement of the water. Since they were all busy, they did not notice the slight tremors of the earthquake, but they noticed the strange behavior of the sea. They were running to the beach and even beyond the beach to watch it. Since the water was receding, they rushed to the beach and they even rushed inward beyond the beach to watch it, to watch this huge ebb that was happening. No such ebb had been witnessed on that coast within the memory of living man. It was extremely unusual. No living man witnessed such a thing. Things never seen before were making apparition. Things that were never seen earlier, it was appearing because the water was receding backwards. Things never seen before were making apparition. Unfamiliar spaces of ribbed sand and reaches of weed-hung rock were left bare even as Hamaguchi gazed, and he could see how far the water receded because the rock that was covered under the water, it had weeds around it. So such ribbed sand portions, the rocks, everything became visible, and none of the people below appeared to guess what that monstrous ebb signified. But none of the people knew what this meant. Why was the sea acting so strangely? Why such a huge ebb happened? Hamaguchi Gohei himself had never seen such a thing before. Hamaguchi was an old man. He himself had never seen such a thing before. But he remembered things told to him in his childhood by his father's father, and he knew all the traditions of the coast. He understood what the sea was going to do. But Hamaguchi remembered something important. He remembered the stories that were handed down to him by his forefathers, and he knew what the sea was going to do. Perhaps he thought of the time needed to send a message to the village or to get the priests of the Buddhist temple on the hill to sound their big bell, but it would take very much longer to tell what he might have thought than it took him to think. He simply called to his grandson. So he thought that entire process of ringing the Buddhist bell would take up too much time, and he did not have so much time. So he quickly called his grandson, "Tada, quick, very quick, light me a torch." And he wanted his grandson to light a torch for him. Taimatsu or pine torches are kept in many coast dwellings for use on stormy nights and also for use at certain Shinto festivals. So taimatsu or pine torches, what were their uses? There were mainly two uses. It was kept in postal houses so that it can help the ships find way in stormy nights, and also for certain Shinto festivals they used these torches. The child kindled a torch at once. The child lighted the torch at once, and the old man hurried with it to the fields where hundreds of rice stacks representing most of his invested capital. So there were rice stacks kept, and most of his money was invested in those rice stacks, stood awaiting transportation. So these were ready and it was kept so that it could be transported to the market. And most of Hamaguchi's money was invested there. Approaching those nearest the verge of the slope, he began to apply the torch to them. So when he went near the boundary of the slope, near the edge of the plateau, he started to light those rice stacks, hurrying from one to another as quickly as his aged limbs could carry him. So he moved as quickly as his old aged limbs could carry him. The sun-dried stalks caught like tinder. The strengthening sea breeze blew the blaze landward, and presently, rank behind rank, the stacks burst into flame, sending skyward columns of smoke that met and mingled into one enormous cloudy whirl. Tada, astonished and terrified, ran after his grandfather, crying, "Oji-san, why? Oji-san, why?" So because of the sea breeze and because the rice stacks were all dried up, it caught fire instantly and the entire stack was on fire. His grandson could not understand the reason behind such an act. His entire capital or money was invested there and he had set the rice on fire. He cried and kept asking why, but Hamaguchi did not answer. He had no time to explain. He was thinking only of the 400 lives in peril. He did not have time to explain. He was only thinking about the danger that engulfed 400 residents of his village. For a while, the child stared wildly at the blazing rice, then burst into tears and ran back to the house, feeling sure that his grandfather had gone mad. Was Hamaguchi really mad? We will find that out in the next episode of this chapter. If you like my work, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. I will meet you all again in the next video. Thank you for watching.